Fit Dads podcast. My name is Bradley Thompson. I'm joined by Ryan Dutton. Ryan, today is all about the running revival, which is how to optimise your runs and just to shine a bit of a light on running and its recent surge in popularity that we're probably seeing. This is probably geared towards people who are maybe new to get into running or people revisiting it after a long time away. In terms of diving straight in, Ryan, running does come with stigmas, from certain fitness groups. I know in particular things like, certain subcategories like powerlifters or bodybuilders, they might not see running as going to progress towards the gains, really. What's your experience with running in particular?
I used to do loads of running, mate. So when I was younger, I played football, and it was a big part of the warming up. It was a big part of the sport itself, and I, as you know, had a home gym. In there was a treadmill, and I used to run for crazy amounts of time on there, just thinking that the more running I do, the better I'll be on the pitch. And it started at like half an hour, built up to an hour. Before I knew it, I was doing 2 hours on the treadmill at 13, 14 years old. I wasn't really into numbers back then, so I couldn't even tell you how far I was running, but I just knew that if I could keep running further every time, it'd overlap onto the pitch. I did see a lot of progress there. I probably overdid it, I think, a little bit in terms of my joints and, just hammering the body a little bit too much at an early age. And it's probably one of the reasons why I fell out of love with running and actually had some barriers later on in life. I've had some knee issues and some hip issues and things like that when I've done running previously. But I've recently got back into it myself, as have you, I think. Or have you always been running, or is it something you've picked up recently as well?
No, it's been very recent. I think I've spoke on previous podcasts about my back condition and trying to get back into it. So literally since I've been pain free with running, it means that I can get back into it again. So probably 6 months in, revisiting it. So it seems quite apt that we do an episode like this.
Exactly right. Similar for me. I think I've been running pretty much since this year, and I'm enjoying it. One thing I've just written down here is a bit of a kind of a full disclosure, I guess. We are definitely by no means in the David Goggins category of running. No. We're just literally simple, casual runners, and we're also coaches who not only program running into our own weeks, but also our clients. I've personally worked with everyone from ultramarathon runners training for 70-plus mile races to people who haven't ran since they were a kid and simply want to get back into it. It's only this year that I've got back into running myself due to some injuries and things like that. But I already see the benefit in terms of how it's overlapping into other areas of my performance. And I genuinely enjoy having it as a fixture in my week. I really love just the freedom of it, the looseness of it, how easily accessible it is. So, today I think we want to discuss how, if so, you're thinking about getting back into running, you approach that, and some of the tactics and strategies and apps and other kind of different metrics you're going to obviously want to pay attention to, and how we would program it with clients if we were coaching you, for example.
Definitely, and I will state that there's loads of different types of running. There's short burst, long burst, you've got intervals, sprints. So I suppose a bit of a jargon buster, There is people who do long distance running, which is, what would you class as long distance? Anything over 5K, 10K? What do you think?
Oh, long distance, that's interesting. I tend to think of long distance, it's such an open-ended kind of...
relative, very, very relative. Do you know what I mean?
That's I think for me, I'd probably class anything long distance as half marathon plus, personally. Maybe that's just on my own kind of standards. Maybe once you get to half marathon, you're like, oh, that's not long distance, mate.
Get on the ultras.
I guess if you go into the ultra forums and communities, it's probably 50 miles plus really is considered as long distance. But I'd say probably half marathon distance is around the long distance.
I've done 2 half marathons and I can confirm they are very long. It's a tough one, and in terms of not necessarily our own credentials, but very similar to yourself. I love football, started running and saw the benefit of it, and all of a sudden got into that sort of running community. And
when was your half marathons? Which ones have you done?
Oh, I've done Sheffield twice, like a maniac.
Wow, brilliant.
Yeah, which the first one I got 150, and I'm like, oh, I can do better than that. And the second one that I ran was the one where it wasn't official, when they basically run out of water, or the water delivery didn't arrive.
I remember this now.
Yeah, and we all just went, sod this, and just ran anyway.
Really? Wow.
And that was mega. I got 138 for that, which I'm thrilled with. I don't think I'm going to get... If ever I do another one...
That's really good.
I don't think I'm getting that.
For anyone
again.
who's outside of Sheffield and isn't aware of the Sheffield Half Marathon, it's known nationally as being one of the toughest in the country. There's a hill in it that just is literally about, almost 5, 6, 7K, just completely uphill.
Yeah.
There's undulating kind of periods of up and down, but it's, in terms of elevation gain, it's one of the highest in the country, isn't it?
It is grim. And in terms of the high impactness of it, if that's a word, high impactness.
Yes.
I'm going to coin it.
We're running with it.
I think it's a tough one because a lot of people, they get these miles under the belt, and if their running technique's maybe a little bit off, should we say, or like subpar, that amount of miles under your legs can shot you a little bit.
Yeah.
Which I suppose common programming mistakes from your part. Have you noticed anything from your clients or things that people just run and cause themselves an injury? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Exactly that. Yeah, just run until they cause themselves some issues. And I think the big thing is one thing I've wrote down here, which is a big thing, is common issues and barriers to entry. Now, I think the biggest barrier to entry, generally with most people, is joint issues, things that are pre-existing. Now, just speaking from personal experience, I've had really bad, notorious knees pretty much since I stopped playing football at like 23, 24. I was able to do like some tough mudders and things of that nature, but I wasn't really doing any consistent running, and I think the only running I would do is long distance and then long periods of time off, and I think that didn't do my knees any help. I've recently stretched a lot. I've recently mobilised all aspects, all areas of my body, should I say, hips, knees, shoulders. I've been on this real mission to like get as open, as flexible as I can be in the last maybe 3 or 4 years. That's paid massive dividends in terms of me going back to running. It's probably more of a personal approach to this, but for me, what I really found helped my knees out was actually putting my knees through bigger ranges of motion. So not just going like halfway in your squat, not just going to parallel, actually getting really deep in like hack squats, deep in like other body weight based exercises that are going to really put that knee through, bigger ranges of motion essentially. That's been a game changer for me in terms of my knee recovery and actually building up my quads so they're strong enough to support my knee. Whether you've got any issues or not, that's something that's worked for me. It's definitely not a blanket statement for everyone. Everyone's different. But one thing I've mentioned here is definitely seek the help of professionals. If you've got anything that you are worried about when it comes to getting back into running, anything that's giving you some jip, knees, back, hips, whatever it might be, see the right people, sports massage people, physios. Those people are great for giving you some insights into why those things are tight. And usually, 9 times out of 10, it's not the thing that you think is the issue. It's something that you hadn't considered.
I'm so glad you said that, because when it comes to like the knee in particular, like the knees, I'm going to say that's a number one issue that a lot of runners have. Yep. Typically, from what I've seen, and again, I can't diagnose everyone, but the typical things that I've seen is it's necessarily a strength and mobility issue. So the knee ends up maybe doing what the ankle or the hip is supposed to do. Yep. And you think about a knee, which is like a door hinge, really, isn't it?
It's a hinge joint.
Yeah, it's a hinge joint. And obviously, if the ankle's maybe not working as it should, or the hip's not working as it should, the knee will try and dominate. So people almost are over dominant with the knees. Yeah. That's typically what we see, or sometimes muscular imbalance as well. Like, I can't tell you how much my pain or pain management and performance improved when maybe I started balancing out like the quad to hamstring strength. Yeah. I used to feel like I have really tight hamstrings when I was running. Turns out they were just weak.
Oh, really?
And yeah, like really, but like physiologically speaking, the hamstring sort of felt like tightness, but it was actually weakness. I think, right. Like from a mental standpoint, it sort of felt very similar. So I found that in particular, obviously mobilising the ankles, mobilising the hips, building some strength in the hamstrings, they were ideal protocols for me.
Again, just really highlights the importance of actually being strong and flexible. There's a lot of people who are very strong in their muscles, yep. But they aren't flexible enough. And you'll notice that when you go for runs over longer distances, you're not looking at rep ranges of like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. You're looking at thousands and thousands of reps over even just a 3K run. So this is something to consider. Flexibility in the joints, the muscles, strength in the muscles specifically. I think one thing that's worth mentioning for me as well is just equipment a little bit as well, and something that's really helped me. I would almost go down to put in it as the main factor as to why I can now run longer distances without the issues. obviously alongside the stretching and strengthening, is that the equipment, the shoes that I wear. I went to a specific sports running shop. Basically, they did assess my gait. This guy was fantastic. He was a proper running buff. I go in there. He's got the headband on. He's brilliant. He's got a wall full of shoes. He's in the back pulling out these kind of modified shoes, prototype things, and he's like, wear this. We assess your gait. He's got me on the running machine doing short kind of jogs, faster open gait, sprint stuff. And it was awesome. And he basically said, these are the issues. These are where I think your problems lie. Knowing that you've got bad knees, these are the shoes that I recommend. And they literally haven't hurt since I've been wearing these shoes. I've tried in previous years, probably most Januaries, I'm like, right, I'm going to try and get back into running. It lasts maybe a month or so before my knees are just trashed and I can't do any more. And they're really painful. But this is, I think, has been the game changer, the shoes that I'm wearing. So I can't recommend enough going into a specific running shop and getting your gait assessed and having a professional tell you what shoes they think you need. That for me has been really important.
I love that. And when it comes to, title of this episode's hopefully going to be Running Revival, essentially why we've maybe seen that surge in popularity from it. To zoom out a little bit, I'm probably going to point the finger at high rocks potentially as well. I do feel like since that hybrid athlete what would you call it? That hybrid athlete movement's come along. Yeah, I'm starting to see people not just wanting to be strong, but wanting to be, dare I say the word, functional, without having loads of hate thrown at me. But
fit rather than functional.
Let's say fit rather than functional. Yeah, I think having to have the muscle mass, but be able to use and shift your body in a certain way. I just think that's been incredible, and I think the combination of the equipment, the knowledge, the movement culturally as well. I think it's all for the best. We've seen the benefits of running from a mental standpoint. One thing I really wanted to shoehorn in here today is what running actually does to you from a physiological level. And from my knowledge, it puts you in what you call a parasympathetic state, which is classed as a rest and digest system, which might not feel like it when you're doing it, but compared to something like HIIT or, I don't know, some sort of lifting weights, it will put you in that rest and digest system, basically, where it promotes stress relief. And I just thought that was an amazing thing to highlight of the benefits of running as well. Yeah.
And running is literally as intense or as easy as you make it based on how you approach it. It's not like any other. You try and do a burpee for you do 3 or 4 burpees, you're going to be mildly out of breath. Yeah. You do 10 burpees in a short period of time, you're going to be very out of breath. And then running is not really like that. You can go for longer period of time without feeling massively, out of breath and intense. And it's just something that is very unique to every person, depending on how you approach it. What's the right way of phrasing it? I guess no matter your fitness levels, there's a style and approach training that suits you. And that, I think, is one of the most mass appealing things of running.
I think just to go back to potentially the types of running and how we can program it and help people optimize it. I just want to shout out to my clients, Luke, who's just ran the Manchester Marathon, did really, really well. But when it comes to the fueling side of things, that's maybe where self-critically Luke will beat himself up. My other client, Joe, is actually doing a marathon a month in 2024, which is...
Oh, I think this guy follows me on Instagram, actually. What's his full name?
Joe Lee.
Joe Lee, that's right. Yeah,
he's fantastic, and seeing that sort of energy from him to do that is fantastic. So we're really going to start paying attention to, again, the injury management side of things, the prehab, if you like, to stop him getting injured so he can actually do this amazing thing for charity. So really deep diving into the science behind it, maybe seeing what he's missing, because he's quite a competitive guy. You know what running's like, you want to beat your self-competition, you want to beat yourself. Absolutely. From, in Joe's case, a month ago. Yeah. He wants to beat himself from a month ago.
So he's not just doing it, he actually every month wants to try and get a little bit better in terms of his performance.
He's not statistically said that, but he's done it so far.
Oh, has he? Okay. How many? So he's run 5 now, is it? Or 4?
Yes, he'll run 5. So, yeah. And it's just fantastic.
And he's getting better every single time.
As far as I'm aware, yeah. So he's doing fantastically well in that sense, and he's harsh on himself. So now we're looking at fine margins. We're looking at potentially how do we make him faster. And I always say nothing's going to get you better at running than running, but you have to be consistent. And one thing that's going to curtail your consistency is injury. So just trying to keep him injury free. Yeah.
Just sticking on the point of injuries, we've mentioned obviously barriers to entry, bad joints, but there's a few other things I think that are barriers to entry and common issues when it comes to running. The first one being shin splints. It's a really big thing when people first start getting back into running. You feel like your body's really fighting back, and people get this really horrendously. I remember having a chat with a guy in the gym the other day. He said he got really bad shin splints and it put him off, and I picked his brains a little bit. I said, what happened? How did this come about? He goes, well, I hadn't ran for a few years, and then I went and did 16k. And I went, what? He has 16k. He goes, that's 3/4 of a half marathon. He goes, yeah, I just felt like I could run. I was feeling okay at the time, and then I woke up the next day and I literally couldn't walk. I had to take the rest of the week off work. I said, well, that's really, in the nicest possible way, it's a really poor approach, because you've not done anything for a long time. It's like not doing bicep curls or training any upper body for a year and then doing 1,000 reps on your biceps. Of course, your biceps and your arms are going to be completely out of action for a week or so. Yeah. And it's exactly the same with your joints and your shin splint, which is essentially your tibia and fibia, that's right, isn't it? From your knee to your ankle, which is essentially, quite it takes a lot of impact, and it's quite hard, but they take a lot of kind of impact, especially within running. So you need to be really careful about how you ease those muscles and joints and bones back into running. So it's definitely something to pick up on. And again, the comment I've mentioned here is easing. Take it really easy.
Yeah, that's fair. And in terms of prehab work, I know I've shoehorned that word in there. When it comes to shin splints and that sort of stuff, the more proactive you can be with that. My understanding of shin splints is it can potentially start from like an imbalance. So you think about how many times people do calf raises.
Yeah.
When was the last time somebody did a shin raise? Where you actually lift your toes up. There's a big muscle, big beefy muscle at the front of your shin. It's called your anterior tibialis. For most people, that muscle is going to be so underpowered. It's going to be so underdeveloped that if you give that some specific attention, which I'm happy to signpost people to, it's an Instagram page. I've mentioned him a couple of times on the podcast. A guy called Ben Patrick.
Knees over toes, yeah.
Insane information he's got. It's brilliant, and he really specialises on knee rehab and that sort of stuff. And I'm spending a long time on knees because, in my opinion, it's the knees that give out for people first.
It's the big issue. Yeah,
big issue.
And you're absolutely right. If you can get that muscle on the front, what's it called? Anterior
tibialis.
Anterior tibialis. If that can be something you factor into your prehab work, it's amazing how that not only protects you against some of the kind of shin splint effects, but also definitely improves your knee health for sure.
100%. Yeah. Obviously, we've briefly mentioned about the mental health aspects of running as well. Have you found yourself have you found it beneficial from just taking that break from work, break from typically lifting weights? Have you enjoyed that side of things?
Yeah, I think because I train so much anyway, it's just another thing in my week. I wouldn't say for me personally it's been a game changer in terms of mental health. I think what I've liked about running more than anything else is the variety of it. It's something different. It's something challenging. It's challenging me in a new way that I've not been challenged for quite a long time.
Yep.
It's a different type of mental battle. Like when you're doing a deadlift or a back squat or a bench press for a very short period of time, you're battling away, and there's a different type of mental fortitude you need. And that's totally different to running, where you're running over a longer period of time, when you're having these little mind games where you all of a sudden, a song comes on that you like, you get a little bit of runner's high and you can feel like you can run forever and there's no barrier. And then all of a sudden you take a huge dip and you're going up this hill and you feel like you're finding every excuse under the sun just to start walking and to stop running. And then you have to really catch yourself and go, no, this is just my mind playing tricks on me. This is the irrational part of my brain now trying to make me stop. And it's overcoming that. So it's really nice from that aspect. From a mental health point of view, all exercise for me is great, in terms of mental health, whatever I'm doing, whether it's running, whether it's lifting weights, I find benefit from it all. But I think the mental stimulus side of it is probably the biggest thing that's really improved in my week.
Nice. From a mental side of things now, the main reason I started running again was genuinely to keep up with Teddy.
Was it?
Yeah. Wow. Because he's so fast on his bike. I think if he absolutely pegs it, I need to keep up with him. Yeah. I need to be able to catch him. And I'm confident I can do that now, because he's quick.
Maybe some sprint training in there now as well.
I'm going to have to. But no, I've got the baseline, the base of the pyramid's good now,
Good,
the aerobic base is there.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
reintroduce the speed and see what's what. But yeah, I mean, from a mental side of things, I will shout out a guy called Dan Wilson, who's an ASICS front runner. I think he's one of like the pacemakers.
Wow.
He's an old contact of mine from Firehouse Fitness when I was there.
Yeah.
I did reach out to him before this episode and sort of say, Dan, what's your advice? He's a huge advocate of men's mental health in particular.
Absolutely.
And yeah, a couple of bits of advice from him really. He mentioned, do it for yourself. You know, don't be looking at, oh, they've got a PB. This is a PB course. I should be smashing this. He's like, just compete against yourself. Yeah. And knowing that from a mental standpoint, that you're trying to get better and that you're trying to beat yourself from the last run or you're trying to beat yourself from your last event that you did.
Yeah.
He's a huge advocate of that. So, like, shout out to Dan for that because he's brilliant.
I think it's also something that we've just obviously got off the podcast with Kate as well, and she was mentioning about kind of how competitive running can be, not just from an internal standpoint, trying to beat your own times all the time, but also when you're on apps like Strava, for example, and you've got like this social media for running essentially, where you've got a timeline of people posting all their runs, which is really inspiring actually. I find it quite good, but it can also be a little bit overwhelming when you see someone who maybe you feel like you should be ahead of, getting a better time than you, or doing other things, or getting out for longer runs. You can beat yourself up a little bit, and I think it's really important you highlighted that it is just really you versus you, but overriding all of that is enjoyment, making sure that you're actually enjoying what you do at all times with exercise, especially running, where it can get, you know, very up and down with your performance. You can have some weeks where you're absolutely flying, you feel amazing, there's no barriers, all the joints, muscles, everything just working in sync, and then some weeks where you feel, for lack of a better phrase, like dog shit basically. Everything aches, everything's sore, nothing's moving right, fitness levels are rock bottom, and you can tell you're fatigued, and that can sometimes happen for prolonged periods of time. It can happen for months on end sometimes, where you just don't feel like you're kind of really getting the most out of your runs. Normally they're the first warning signs to like fatigue, and maybe you need to go away and do a little bit of rehab work on certain areas, stretch things off, mobilise. But enjoyment factor, never forget that you're doing this for enjoyment. You're doing it because you love it. And if you ever want to just go into like what we call this zone 2 now running, where you're just running for literal fun, do prolonged periods of that to really, just make sure that you are enjoying it.
There's a lot to be said about ritualising stuff like that. Like every Sunday morning, or most Sunday mornings, should I say, like more often than not. Let's call it 3 out of 4 weeks, Ryan.
Yep.
I will go on a run Sunday morning. And it's quite nice because I get up nice and early. I get off, not quite see the sunrise now. It's a bit late in the day for that. But yeah, like in the summer, just amazing. I love getting up, getting out, as quick as I can, 5K.
Yeah.
And then I get back and Ted knows, Ted knows. It's like, did you have a good run, Daddy? Like, did you run fast? Did you run far? And he knows now, and it's amazing. And he knows that I run to keep up with him. And I make it very clear. Like, so you need to be as fast as me. Yeah. Which is,
it won't be long before he's, asking if he can come with you, and you're going on your first like little 3K run together.
Yeah. He's straight in with 5, mate.
Is he really? 3K on the run, 2K on the bike, mate.
Yeah. That sounds fair. That's fair.
Another barrier to entry, common issue is obviously fitness levels. People just go back to running, they realise that they're wildly less fit than they remember them being when they were running as a kid. And again, just coming back to what I said, it can be as easy or as hard as you make it. It's all about programming, essentially. Yeah. And one thing I will give a big shout out to, and definitely worth mentioning on a podcast where we're talking about a running revival, is the Couch to 5K. This is something that I've used with so many clients. It just makes my job a lot easier when someone says to me, I want to get back into running. How do I approach it? I'm worried about my fitness levels. I'm worried about the kind of the injuries and the shin splints and the bad knees. Where should I start? And straight away, just download a Couch to 5K. There's so many different apps. I think the NHS one is generally the best that I've kind of come across. And it's just a set out program, super easy, starts really steady. And funnily enough, I was doing this before the Couch to 5K was actually a thing, where someone said to me, how do I start running? And I'm thinking, well, we don't want to send you off onto a 10, 15, 20 minute run straight away. It's going to cause some issues. Well, how about if we break it down into 5-minute sections? This is what we used to go, right, we're going to take half an hour of your day. You're going to do 6 different runs. And you're going to run for a minute, walk for 4, run for a minute, walk for 4, run for a minute, walk for 4 for 30 minutes. Then we'd move the ratio to like 2 minutes running, 3 minutes walking, 3 minutes running, 2 minutes walking, until before they knew it, they're doing a full 5-minute run, maybe a full 10-minute run, and there was a real easing in process essentially. Yeah. The Couch to 5K is a little bit more complex in its approach, which definitely is better for me. And obviously they've got really good, intelligent, runners who understand it a lot better than I do, to kind of come in there and program these runs for people. But I think it's a fantastic resource. If you are thinking about this running revival and getting back into it, that should be, I would say, probably your first protocol.
A client of mine mentioned that there's one that's got Steve Cram, like just narrating you through it.
Brilliant.
And I just think, what a cool way to I'm pretty sure there's a market there for, people to get roped in with their favourite athletes or actors maybe.
I'm trying to think who I'd put on mine. Maybe Goggins.
Yeah, just Goggins.
You're running too slow, fool.
Who's going to carry the boats?
Who's going to carry the boats, Ryan?
Just constantly for
you piece of
30
shit.
minutes. And he's hardcore, isn't he?
Yeah,
and,
maybe, like I said, we're definitely not in the David Goggins league of running at the moment, but and whoever ever want to be in that league, I'm not sure.
No. He's a walking meme, isn't he, to be fair?
Pretty much.
Yeah. I think in terms of a barrier for entry that I've noticed, it's maybe not linking the benefits. So a lot of really strong people I know are they detest or they're completely disgusted by the thought of running.
Yeah.
Like, that'll take away from my gains. Why would I do that?
Yeah.
And you've probably seen this now, but as soon as your aerobic base, your cardio levels improved, your recovery in the gym improves. And I think a lot of people forget that, where it's all right being strong, it's all right looking great, but can you recover? Are you fit? Are you actually, how do your lungs turn over oxygen, basically?
When I've been at my heaviest and I've been really on a strength push and I've been trying to really get as strong as I can, I could do a set of 5 deadlifts and it'd take me 10 minutes to recover. Like, I'd be so out of breath, so just mentally not in a good space, just flat on my back, essentially. If it was a really, really intense set of maybe 5 to 10, let's say, that just isn't healthy. And I've come to realise that, and I want to be strong. I want to be the best I can be in terms of my power and my output. But I've always, I think, had this thing in me that knew that it wasn't particularly healthy being at the weights I was at. And I'm happy to sacrifice some strength if it means being a little bit fitter. Whereas in the past, I think you're right, there was a stigma around, like, you either do one or two things. What, are you a runner or are you a weightlifter? You can't be both. You can't do both. It doesn't work. You can't build muscle and get fit. And I think, yes, the high rocks, but prior to that was the CrossFit movement. I think that's what really started the kind of the OG hybrid athlete, where, these guys are jacked. Like, look at them. Most of them could probably step on bodybuilding stages and do half decent. And they're also fit as fiddles, like some of the fittest people in the world, essentially, because of their style of training. They can run, they can burpee, they can do all sorts of fancy things whilst carrying quite a lot of muscle mass. Yeah. And that's probably more of the performance and type of aesthetic physique that I'm aiming for now. It's a funny one, really, because I've gone down the bodybuilding route most of my life because it's fascinated me. It's what I love. I love how it looks. I love the style of training. I love being strong. But actually, when I think about me as a kid, I was always fitter than I was stronger. I'm naturally more fit than I'm strong, and it's something I've suppressed, like the fitness side of things, for a long time. So I think that's why when I'm getting back into it now, I've been really loving it so much. And but I totally appreciate that not everyone's like that. I've got some clients who I think that, Mark, who I've mentioned a few times on the podcast, that guy was born to lift weights. He's a man mountain, essentially. He's had some incredible numbers for his age, but one thing he's terrible at is running and the cardio side of things. Something we've massively improved over the last kind of 6 months to a year, but he just isn't. His body's not made for it, and he finds it really difficult, and he has to work harder to be better at those things. Yeah. And so a lot of it is genetically what your body's made for and how it's made up and what it responds better to, and knowing that as well.
If that's the case, I'm probably the anti-mark, because I find probably similar to you, like the athletic side of things, I find more comfortable when it comes to lifting weights. That's a really conscious effort on my part to be like, well, I know that's one of the main reasons why I got into lifting weights, because I knew that it'd benefit sporting aspect. And I remember one summer, I lifted lots of weights for football pre-season rather than do loads of running. And the carryover were just crazy. Like, it went so well, and
brilliant. Didn't
really do any like bilateral back squat, deadlifts and stuff. It were all single leg, single arm work, but got really strong in those areas. And the carryover were crazy. Yeah. It were really, really good.
But, spinning back to running, this stuff all helps. You can't, I guarantee even Mo Farah had a strength and conditioning program. Yeah. He will have been lifting weights. He will have been back squatting. He will have been doing some type of deadlifting, hinging movements. He will have been being strong in his legs to make sure that he could do a 10K really quickly, to make sure that he could do a half marathon really quickly. So it doesn't matter what your sport is. And to come back to kind of some of the people that I've worked with, I always use this lady as an analogy. I had a lady come in here and she was, she'd done a 70-mile run a few years ago, but she didn't feel particularly comfortable. She'd signed up to another one and she wanted to do this 70-mile run and it feel really good. I said, what was the issues? She goes, when I got to the end of the run, like, I felt like two things. My cardiovascular system had just hit a bit of a rock bottom and all the energy and strength in my legs had just gone. So I said, right, we need to kind of factor in some different styles of training compared to just running, which was all she was doing. She wasn't doing anything else but just running long distance. And we need to obviously have a strength element to your program as well. This is a lady who could do 70-mile runs. There's no question at all that this was a fit person. She was super fit, super fit.
I will clarify that Ryan's just said 7-0 there as well.
70 plus miles this race. I think it was 72, 73 miles this race she was prepping for.
Wow.
And she came in and session 1, we assessed her. Session 2, we'd put a very mild circuit together. We had some squats, we had some deadlifts, and there were some pull-ups in there with a band, not kind of crazy weights. At the end of the session, she was feeling horrifically sick.
Wow.
Horrifically sick. She wasn't actually sick. Said she could have probably been sick if she put her hands down her throat.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, this is strange because you can run way longer than I can.
Yeah.
I could do that circuit and not break a sweat, but I couldn't run 70 miles. And it just shows how different the areas of your cardiovascular system that you use based on the type of workout that you're doing. So this is probably more down the style of CrossFit, shall we say, with the conditioning workouts, weights in a circuit. Her body just wasn't used to that. And when she started kind of doing these exercises that actually worked muscles quite intensely, under high intensity kind of cardiovascular situations, her body didn't like it. It broke down. It started having that response of feeling sick. Whereas it was so used to running long distance that was her comfort zone. And vice versa. I've had people who come into the sessions, we do conditioning workouts, CrossFit style stuff for many, many months. I ask them to go for a run and then they fall apart and they're like, Ryan, I thought I was fit. I'm smashing these circuits in your sessions. Why can't I run? Again, just different areas of your cardiovascular system.
And like you said, it's a different system. And to shout out Ryan Hall, who we've had on the podcast before, I gave a book to Ryan called The Great Cardio Myth. And I think it's a great bit of reading for anyone who is curious about different styles of running. And it's from a guy called Craig Ballantyne, and he really breaks down traditional types of running compared to something known as like Tabata training or trying to improve your VO2 max. And he does a great job at like breaking it down and giving you a different perspective shift. I love that book for the reason that it made me think differently. It's probably not aged very well in the sense that he's like, so you don't need to do long runs, you can just do this. But actually, when you see maybe where the industry was at, where we really bastardized the long runs side of things and thought you can get what you want in this time frame and this intensity, which serves a purpose, yes, but just to give people something to think about, the Great Cardio Myth.
Yeah,
which
good recommendation.
I loved.
I'm glad also you've mentioned some of the kind of more technical terminology like VO2 max, which is generally something you need obviously throughout a kind of long distance run, but also is more apparent on the kind of more shorter, high intense circuits that you'll do. But another really important couple of terminologies is the aerobic and anaerobic systems, which I think is really what people undervalue when it comes to running as well. Like as soon as if you're a complete newbie, as soon as you start running, you're probably going to be working a little bit of both, to be fair. Over time, you're hoping to work more of your aerobic system, which is you actually using oxygen over a longer period of time. And then the anaerobic is where it's essentially just a short, sharp burst, which is probably really where the client that I had who was an ultramarathoner went wrong because she hadn't worked on her anaerobic system enough. But the anaerobic system being really strong will help you when you get to kind of the end of those 70-mile runs, for sure.
When I start working with new clients, there's a test that I do, typically on a rowing machine, just because it's quite low skill. You don't have to learn a lot of technique, which is a 3-minute row.
Okay.
All right. And it's a bit of a personality test as well. Some people fly out of the blocks. Other people are quite slow and steady. Usually what happens is I try and, cue people up to what they're going to feel. So as they're doing it, I'm like, right, when you get to around 1 minute 15, your breathing will start to change. and they can feel it. Actually, the system's almost changing over. It's amazing to watch because you can see like their face change and the breathing change, and
It's getting a bit tough now.
Yeah, and all of a sudden they go from that anaerobic without oxygen to the body going, oh, we're still doing this, and then you need that.
We need some more oxygen here. Yeah,
which it's fascinating to do that. And again, is there anything else on that side of things you want to cover just before I move on to?
No, I think that's it really. Yeah, we've covered a lot of the kind of common issues, barriers to entry, issues that people get when they first start running, and obviously solutions to those. So yeah, I'm happy to move on.
In terms of moving on, I would probably recommend people performance train if they feel like they are obsessing over their looks potentially. And the reason why I say that is I regularly have people come to me who maybe have a certain level of body dysmorphia. You know, they're bothered about scale weight, they're bothered about how they look in the mirror, and all they've ever done is lift to look good, or all they've ever done is train to look good.
Okay.
All of a sudden, if you can introduce running or some sort of performance element there, where they have to get better than what they were yesterday, or get better than what they were last run, mentally speaking, I've found that a complete game changer for a lot of people who I've worked with and still work with now.
That's great advice, because what those people probably got used to doing is seeing the biggest sense of satisfaction from the way they look.
Yep.
And it's a bit of a slippery slope because we don't always look at our best. We're going to have moments in the week, maybe periods of time in our lives where motivation's not as high, we don't train as much, you are just a little bit less strict with your food for whatever reason, and you're not looking your best. Doesn't mean to say that other things aren't progressing, but you can be a bit blindsided to that. Whereas a performance goal is fantastic because it gives you that sense of, okay, regardless of how I'm looking, I know I'm getting better. There's some metric that's telling me that I'm improving.
You either get better or you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's such a tangible thing where, and crowds as well, like obviously I've mentioned about the 10K that I did, the first 10K that I did since reviving the running, if you like. The crowds are just mad. Like, it really carries you through. Yeah. And like it's PB central if you get it right. And I don't know what it is. It's just a nice. The running community in particular is such a big one, and I know you've just set up your R5 Strava community.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And just something I want to touch on when you mentioned it a second ago was the community aspect of running. And I think a lot of running clubs now are set up purposefully with the intent of being a bit of a mental health kick for people. And a lot of running clubs, you would just have that. They openly say, we take on people because we want to improve their mental health. If you are struggling, this is the club for you. Like, we've got a lot of people who've been through similar things, coming out the back end of it, are willing to give you advice. There's a client that I took on this year, I won't name them, but they had some real serious issues with their mental health. They found running, and running was a real turning point. They now run with 2 or 3 different running clubs. One of them's quite heavy on the mental health side of things. And I think it's something that if you haven't considered when it comes to your mental health running, it's something I really want you to be aware of, and there are clubs out there that can really help you for sure.
Well, I mean, what a combination. You've got a modality of training which promotes your mental health improvement.
Yeah.
Combine that with a group of people and a community. I read a quote the other day which is, we've never been more connected but more lonely.
Absolutely.
Which is quite scary actually.
Absolutely right. I always think about like cities. Cities are the most densely populated places in the country, aren't they?
Yep.
In every country. Yet, I think most cities are also the most isolated. People feel the most isolated.
Yep.
And I think a lot of that, I mean, if we're going off on a bit of a tangent here, but I think a lot of that is based on the fact that when you're isolated and you live out in the countryside, for example, in the UK, when you see someone, you'll be like, oh my God, it's a person.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Let's have a chat with that person.
Yeah.
You go down to the pub and you see people that you've not seen all week, and you've been quite isolated in your job, whatever you're doing. When you're in a big city, you're seeing so many people. You get almost, what's the right word, kind of desensitized to people and their feelings and their emotions. And it's probably why like New York's known as being quite rude and obnoxious, because people just aren't. They're so used to seeing people that they aren't kind of cognizant of their feelings and how they should act around them.
There's comedy skits about Northerners on the London Underground.
Oh, so nice.
Yeah. It's just like, why are they talking to me? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, because we're just not, we are, I think generally we are nicer for that respect.
100%.
Not to say that people in the South aren't nice, but I think people in London especially, on the Underground,
it's just hectic, isn't it?
It's just nuts. You see people as like a nuisance rather than like someone to interact with. But just spinning that back to mental health, I agree. Like, I didn't set up the R5 club for the mental health aspect, but I know there'll be people who come there and they join on this Sunday. They join us on Sunday because they want that sense of community, and a sense of community is something that a lot of people lack, for sure.
I think, I suppose, closing comments from me, really, Ryan. Sounds a bit backwards talking about a warm up towards the end, but one thing that I'd probably like to promote more runners to do, or soon to be runners, is just try and warm up effectively. And that's taking impact in your joints, that's warming up the correct muscles, doing a lot of single leg work, potentially. There's a bit of a warm up protocol I recommend, which is single leg hip bridges, pogos, and just some rotations. If you can do 3 of those things, they might mean nothing to anyone. So if you want to know a little bit more about that, please feel free to reach out, to ping us a message, or
just YouTube them. And those things alone will just give you some good ideas about what to do. But I can't kind of promote that anymore. I think it's a good warm up for a lot of people, resolves a lot of injuries and issues. And I don't always recommend this to everyone, but for me, a really good static stretch is generally pretty good for me and my body. I know it doesn't work for everyone, and I think there's a lot of research and studies out there show that actually static stretching before exercise isn't always the best. But there's going to be people who buck the trend on that. And I think I'm probably one of those people where, for me, if I just sit and really intensely stretch my hamstrings, my quads, my hips, my glutes, those key areas of issues for me just release a lot of tension and allow me to run more freely.
100%. And I suppose topics that we've not covered, Ryan, is there anything in particular you've got on your list that you want to summarise?
No, I think it's just number one, starting nice and steady. Ease yourself in. Couch to 5K is always a really good approach. I actually think something like Strava, being signed up to Strava is a good shout as well, because you can actually start documenting and logging, and there'll be an app that tells you what your best 5K is, where your times are, and what metrics you should be looking out at. There's running clubs on Strava where you can join and get in communities. There's places on online and maybe even on Facebook or Instagram in your local area where you can find local running clubs. That sense of community, that one-to-one in-person community is fantastic as well. And I think taking all the precautions when it comes to common issues, whether it's bad joints, making sure that you seek out professionals, stretch mobility guides, things like that, shin splints, even easing yourself in, same with fitness levels, and equipment as well. I can't stress enough how good a really good pair of shoes is. Like, just don't whack on some of your old running trainers from like 5 years ago that are battered, dog's half chewed. They are only going to cause you issues. Put your hand in your pocket, get a decent set of running trainers, have a professional assess your gait. Like I said, for me, it was just the best move I did when I got back into running this year.
Hopefully we've given you a bit of an idea, so we probably want people to go out and buy the gear. Nobody wants to be all the gear, no idea, do they?
Of course, yeah. I think people are a little bit afraid of that, but if there's any sport where you need the correct kit, it's something where you're doing thousands and thousands of reps of it. It's so important.
And again, I'm really happy to see the running revival. It's low barrier to entry for a lot of people. It's scalable. So great sense of community. And I just want to sort of signpost people to Ryan's running community as well on Strava. Like, what's the name of it?
R5 Run Club. Yeah, we just have essentially, if you are in Sheffield, we are starting a little bit of running club. We've not decided how frequently we're going to do it yet, but it is going out this Sunday, but I'm not actually sure when this episode will be. It'll probably be, when this episode goes out, it'll be last Sunday. But if you just search on Strava, R5 Run Club, we are just a small community of clients and friends of R5 that are going to get out and do some small 3, 5, 7K runs, potentially more. We're just going to base it on where the community's ability levels lie. But what I really wanted to do was just bring everyone together in my kind of close-knit circle who are into running and have given that sense of community, and no matter what their ability levels are. I've got people who've just started who are quite overweight and want to kind of get into it, to people who've ran all sorts of half marathons and marathons. So it's a real mix of people that I hope are going to kind of create this little community now. So
100%. No, it sounds really exciting, and I think if anyone's after that inspiration, I do think that run club in particular, obviously go ahead and follow my client, Joe Lee Running, I think he is on Instagram.
Right.
Yeah, obviously a marathon a month, and please get behind him because he's a really positive guy. He's doing it for an amazing reason. So,
and just follow inspiring people who you think, wow, that's really cool. Could I ever get to that one day? And I know from my own personal experience, if I follow people who I'm inspired by, it just helps me out. I think about those people when I'm in my darkest moments of my runs and I really want to give up. Would that person give up? No, shit, I better keep going then. Do you know what I mean? Just that little moment in a run where I'm like, what would that person do? Okay, I better keep running. It's inspiring. It is. So, again, immersing yourself in the community, getting involved, and running for you more than anything else.
Definitely. And I do think if you want to inspire a runner to be, or someone who's currently a runner or wants to get back into it, you know the drill by now. It's going forward the fit dads.
Absolutely. Hashtag forward the fit dads. Let's spread the message far and wide. We're trying to give out as much helpful, resourceful information that we can on every topic. And if there's someone who you think might be really into running right now or struggling to kind of get the bug, maybe you've got a friend who you want to convince to get into it, maybe you've got a relative who has fallen out of love with it, or someone who you know is getting back into it, definitely forward them this podcast for 100%. Sure.
If you know someone who maybe does fit that bill if they've got the gear, but they just need an idea, send them our way.
Absolutely. Guys, thank you for joining us on the Fit Dads podcast. We'll see you on the next one.
See you soon.